Hollywood lights up our screens, shaping desires and dreams for billions. What few realize is that its story is already written, not just in film reels, but in ancient texts, revealing its profound prophetic role. It all began in the dusty, sun-drenched plains of Southern California at the dawn of the 20th century. A curious convergence of inventors, dreamers, and entrepreneurs fled the restrictive patent wars of the East Coast, seeking open spaces and endless sunshine. They found it in a quiet, agricultural suburb of Los Angeles, Hollywood. This was not a place born of spiritual vision, but of practical necessity and boundless ambition. Pioneers, armed with little more than cameras and a fierce determination, saw the magic in moving pictures. They sought to capture life, to tell stories, to entertain the masses with a new, powerful medium. From these humble, almost accidental beginnings, a factory of dreams began to rise, driven by the simple yet potent desire to transport audiences into worlds previously unimagined. As the decades turned, this nascent industry blossomed into the golden age of Hollywood. Films were not merely entertainment. They were powerful cultural sermons shaping the very fabric of American society. Under the watchful eye of the Hays Code, an industry-led set of moral guidelines, Hollywood became a surprising custodian of traditional virtues. Stories celebrated heroism, reinforced family values, and championed clear lines between good and evil. From epic tales of courage to heartwarming romantic comedies, cinema constructed a shared national mythology, teaching audiences what it meant to be virtuous, to persevere, and to believe in a righteous outcome. It was a time when the silver screen often reflected, and at times even dictated, the moral compass of the nation. Yet even amidst this era of moralistic storytelling, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift was beginning beneath the surface. Behind the opulent studio gates, in the writers' rooms and intellectual circles, the foundational beliefs of traditional faith began to wane. Intellectual currents of secular humanism, emphasizing human reason and agency over divine revelation, seeped into the creative consciousness. Writers and directors, influenced by evolving philosophies, began to subtly question religious dogma, to exalt human achievement as the ultimate triumph, and to frame morality as a construct rather than a divine absolute. The light of traditional faith, though still visible on screen, began to fade in the hearts of those who crafted the narratives. This quiet departure from a biblical worldview would, in time, redefine the very essence of good and evil for generations to come. The Hays Code, once a formidable guardian of Hollywood's morality, soon found itself under increasing pressure. While designed to instill virtue, it also sparked a tension between control and artistic expression. Filmmakers, driven by creative impulses and a desire for realism, began to chafe under its strictures. They sought new ways to depict romance, violence, and complex moral dilemmas, pushing the boundaries of what was deemed acceptable. The struggle was palpable. Commercial interests clashed with moral guardians, while artists yearned for unfiltered expression. Each loophole found, each boundary tested, became a crack in the code's foundation. This escalating battle for creative freedom, though seemingly a triumph for art, was also a quiet victory for secularism, foreshadowing an era where restraint would diminish, and the industry's moral landscape would be irrevocably altered. After the devastation of World War II, a new global order began to emerge, and with it, the undeniable cultural dominance of America. Hollywood, the dream factory, became the architect of this new global imagination, crafting and exporting what would become known as the American dream. Through countless films, it painted vivid pictures of aspirational lives, manicured suburban lawns, gleaming automobiles, the nuclear family, and the pursuit of individual happiness and material comfort. Movies became silent diplomats, subtly persuading audiences across continents that this particular vision of success and contentment was not merely American, but universal. From the drive-ins of California to the cinema houses of Europe and Asia, the pursuit of consumer goods and an individualistic ideal became the global standard, sold not by advertisers, but by storytellers. What few realized then was how profoundly this exported ideal would reshape the very fabric of global aspirations, influencing generations far beyond American shores. This cultural export was no accident. Hollywood's films, propelled by robust distribution networks, began to infiltrate every corner of the world. Iconic blockbusters, designed for universal appeal, transcended language barriers with their powerful imagery and relatable human themes. Whether it was the epic sweep of historical dramas or the escapist fantasy of musicals, these stories spoke a language understood by all. From bustling Tokyo to the quiet villages of Latin America, Hollywood offered a window into a world of possibility, excitement, and evolving values. Its reach was unparalleled, establishing it as a cultural force capable of shaping collective consciousness on an unprecedented scale. The world, it seemed, had become Hollywood's audience. The true power of Hollywood, however, lay not just in its global reach, but in the insidious, almost hypnotic power of narrative itself. Stories, delivered through the captivating medium of film, possess an unparalleled ability to bypass logical defenses and embed beliefs directly into the heart and mind. They define heroes and villains, illustrate consequences, and subtly teach what is good, what is evil, and what constitutes a meaningful life. More persuasive than direct arguments, these cinematic tales began to subtly shape an audience's understanding of morality, identity, and truth. Films didn't just entertain, they educated, they converted, they instilled a worldview. Whether reinforcing traditional virtues or challenging societal norms, the narrative power of Hollywood was reshaping the very bedrock of human belief systems. Yet, as Hollywood's influence deepened, a subtle but significant shift began to occur in its storytelling. The clear-cut lines between good and evil, once so foundational to its narratives, began to blur. The rise of morally ambiguous protagonists, the celebrated anti-hero, and storylines that questioned traditional institutions, be it government, church, or family, became increasingly common. Films no longer merely reflected society's complexities. They actively championed a more nuanced, often relativistic understanding of morality. What was once considered taboo or unequivocally wrong found its way onto the screen, presented not as a warning, but as a facet of human experience to be explored, even empathized with. This shift from prescriptive morality to descriptive morality mirrored a broader cultural trend, leaving audiences to grapple with increasingly complex, often unsettling, moral dilemmas without a clear ethical compass. This gradual erosion of clear moral boundaries was symptomatic of a deeper, underlying spiritual drift within the industry itself. As the light of traditional faith began to dim in the creative core of Hollywood, a vacuum of meaning emerged. The grand narratives that once anchored human existence to a divine framework slowly gave way to stories centered solely on human achievement, self-discovery, and subjective truth. This spiritual emptiness, though often hidden behind the glittering facade of success, entertainment, and artistic expression, left a profound void. It was a void that would inevitably be filled, not by a return to traditional faith, but by a proliferation of alternative spiritualities, self-worship, and ideologies increasingly at odds with biblical truth. What was lost, few truly grasped, but the dramatic consequences were yet to unfold. The mid-20th century closed, giving way to a new era, a world unbound. The 1960s and 70s roared onto the global stage, bringing with them a cultural upheaval that Hollywood not only reflected, but actively amplified. From protest rallies challenging established norms to bohemian cafes brimming with new philosophies, society demanded a raw, unfiltered authenticity that often clashed directly with traditional morality. The old guard of the Hays Code had crumbled, no longer able to stem the tide. Independent cinema rose, bolder and more explicit, interpreting societal liberation as freedom from nearly all moral constraints. This was more than a shift in taste. It was a seismic spiritual tremor, reshaping the very narratives deemed acceptable. With this new freedom, Hollywood began a systematic campaign of challenging authority. Films became powerful tools for critiquing every established foundation: government, the church, the family unit, and even the concept of divine authority itself. Narratives celebrated protagonists who operated outside conventional morality, painting them as heroes against corrupt systems. From the rebellious outlaws of Bonnie and Clyde to the anti-establishment defiance of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, these stories subtly delegitimized traditional sources of truth and order. Entertainment was no longer merely reflecting rebellion, it was actively teaching it, prompting audiences to question where their ultimate loyalty should lie. Nowhere was this erosion more evident than in the portrayal of the family unit and gender roles. Hollywood's lens shifted away from biblical norms, embracing fluid, individualistic interpretations. Divorce, once a hushed tragedy, became a common narrative element, often presented as a path to personal liberation. Single parenthood, once a challenge, was normalized. Evolving portrayals of sexuality and gender identity began to permeate the screen, subtly reshaping societal expectations and definitions of love, commitment, and identity. Media, with its pervasive reach, gradually normalized these new family structures and gender expressions, slowly but effectively redefining the most fundamental unit of society in the global consciousness. The ideas and aesthetics once confined to fringe counterculture movements found their way into the mainstream. What began as underground films or niche music acts soon permeated popular culture through Hollywood's powerful distribution channels. Themes of rebellion, drug use, and alternative lifestyles became increasingly prevalent, no longer shocking but accepted, even celebrated. The lines between art house cinema and blockbuster entertainment blurred, as formerly niche ideas were globally disseminated and normalized. Music videos, emerging cable television, and an increasingly interconnected world ensured that what was once considered radical became standard, demonstrating Hollywood's unparalleled power to reshape collective consciousness and cultural norms. Accompanying this shift was an undeniable rise in explicit content, particularly in sexuality and violence. The old taboos were systematically broken down. Film ratings evolved, not to restrict, but often to categorize an ever-loosening standard. Content unthinkable in earlier eras, graphic violence, nudity, and explicit sexual acts became commonplace. This shift had profound implications, especially for younger audiences, fostering a growing desensitization. What was once shocking became ordinary. What was once forbidden became permissible. Hollywood's relentless push against boundaries was not just about creative freedom. It was a spiritual challenge, confronting audiences with content that tested the very limits of their moral compass. This constant exposure to morally ambiguous and explicit content initiated a subtle yet powerful process of desensitization. The shock value of violence and sexuality diminished with each passing film and show. As the abnormal became normalized on screen, a blurring of moral lines began to manifest in real life. Audiences, particularly the young, found their moral compass subtly reprogrammed. Evil, when presented repeatedly and without consequence, began to seem ordinary, even acceptable. This was a chilling realization. The entertainment consumed was not merely passive viewing but an active force, subtly changing individuals, shaping their understanding of right and wrong without them even knowing it. Hollywood. The very name evokes images of dazzling lights, adoring crowds, and figures elevated to near-mythic status. Today, celebrity worship has become a global religion, with red carpets serving as its altars and award shows its sacred rituals. Millions hang on every word, every image, every trend emanating from these modern demigods. Actors, musicians, and influencers are not merely entertainers. They are the new pantheon, worshipped by legions, their power and influence extending far beyond the silver screen. What few realize is that this adoration echoes ancient hero worship, a spiritual diversion where human achievement is revered above divine reverence, subtly shifting our gaze from the creator to the created. Hand in hand with this deification of fame, is the relentless glorification of wealth and excess. Hollywood, both on and off screen, paints a glittering portrait of luxury mansions, private jets, and extravagant parties, presenting conspicuous consumption as the ultimate aspiration. Narratives often center on the pursuit of immense riches as the primary goal, the true measure of success. This relentless emphasis on material acquisition, this worship of the tangible, draws a chilling parallel to the biblical golden calf, a brazen symbol of humanity's ancient, dangerous temptation to elevate worldly possessions to an idol, replacing the pursuit of God with the pursuit of gold. But the influence of celebrity extends beyond mere admiration or envy. These figures often assume the role of cultural prophets, their voices amplified by powerful platforms, dictating trends, moral stances, and even political opinions to a global audience. From talk show appearances to social media pronouncements, their pronouncements are often accepted without critical thought, shaping social narratives with unmatched speed and reach. The voice of celebrity, though unelected and often spiritually unanchored, can easily drown out other, more biblically sound, voices in the public square, eroding discernment and fostering a dependence on human wisdom over divine truth. At the core of this cult of celebrity lies a pervasive narcissism and self-glorification. Hollywood's narratives frequently champion themes of follow your heart and you are enough as ultimate truths, fostering a culture where the individual becomes the supreme measure of all things. Personal branding, self-promotion, and the relentless pursuit of self-actualization often eclipse any call to self-sacrifice or divine submission. This deification of man, this subtle yet insistent elevation of self, stands in stark contrast to biblical warnings against pride and the dangerous temptation to make oneself equal to God, a subtle yet profound form of idolatry. As self-worship takes root, so too does a radical redefinition of morality. Hollywood increasingly presents right and wrong as subjective and relative, detached from any objective, divine standard. Films and TV shows depict fluid moral codes, where traditional sins are often celebrated, reframed as virtues, or simply presented as justifiable choices for individual fulfillment. The rejection of absolute truth in favor of individual experience leads to confusion and spiritual relativism, creating a worldview where personal preference trumps eternal principles, leaving society adrift without a divine anchor. This spiritual drift creates a vacuum, often filled by the allure of the occult. Hollywood's growing fascination with and normalization of witchcraft, demonology, astrology, and various forms of Eastern mysticism is undeniable. Fantasy films and horror shows frequently feature these elements, often stripped of their spiritual warnings, presented instead as benign, empowering, or simply entertaining. Yet, what many viewers fail to realize is that these portrayals contradict clear biblical warnings against engaging with the occult, inviting hidden spiritual dangers into the lives of those who consume them without discernment. Despite the outward glamour, the immense wealth, and the adoration, the pursuit of fame and self-glorification promoted by Hollywood often culminates in profound spiritual emptiness. The industry's glittering facade frequently conceals stories of addiction, despair, and inner turmoil among its most celebrated figures. The outward triumph often masks an inward void, a hollow promise that no amount of worldly success can truly fill. This spiritual vacuum, this longing for lasting peace and purpose, reveals a fundamental truth. The throne of the heart was never meant for self, but for God alone. From the earliest pages of Genesis, humanity has harbored a potent, often perilous ambition to build structures of influence that reach the heavens, to establish unity and greatness on its own terms, apart from the Creator. This ancient narrative, the story of the Tower of Babel, echoes across millennia, finding a startling modern parallel in the global ambitions of Hollywood. Just as the people of Shinar sought to make a name for themselves, building a city and a tower whose top might reach into heaven, so too has Hollywood constructed an unparalleled edifice of cultural power, designed for universal appeal and dominance. This is not merely about entertainment. It is about humanity's attempt to achieve greatness and unity, but critically, without God at its foundation. One of the most profound aspects of film, and indeed all visual media, is its ability to transcend the barriers of language and culture. An image speaks universally. A story told through moving pictures can communicate emotion, aspiration, and ideology without a single word needing translation. Hollywood harnessed this power, becoming a master of a new universal language, capable of disseminating a singular, pervasive message across the globe. Its narratives, often promoting humanistic values of self-reliance, individual freedom, and a collective human destiny, have become a shared cultural text for billions. This universal language, however, carries a profound spiritual implication. It can unite humanity, but the critical question remains, unite under what truth? Or, as in Babel's misdirection, unite under a false ideology? This pursuit of a universal message, while seemingly benign, has a far more concerning consequence: the systematic erasure of distinctions. Hollywood's pervasive influence has fostered a cultural melting pot, where distinct moral, cultural, and even gender categories are increasingly blurred. Films and shows routinely challenge traditional boundaries, promoting a relativistic worldview where tolerance and inclusivity are exalted, often at the expense of distinct, divinely revealed truths. When all lines are blurred, when truth and error become indistinguishable in the name of acceptance, a spiritual weakening occurs. This is not true unity, but a homogenization that leaves humanity adrift, severed from the anchors of timeless truth. From the grand narratives of science fiction epics to subtle themes woven into everyday dramas, Hollywood frequently champions a one-world narrative. It presents visions of humanity uniting to overcome global threats, establishing utopian societies or unified governance, all under a secular banner. In these narratives, divine authority is often implicitly or explicitly sidelined, God either absent, ridiculed, or relegated to the realm of outdated myth. This is where the parallel to biblical prophecy becomes chillingly clear. Scripture warns of a future unified world system that actively rejects God. Is Hollywood, then, functioning as a powerful propagandist, subtly preparing the collective consciousness for a future where humanity believes it can, or must, succeed entirely without its creator? The ultimate outcome of a culture built on human ambition and unity without God is a spiritual vacuum. Despite the dazzling lights and endless stories, a deep existential longing persists. Hollywood's tower, built on secular humanism and moral relativism, ultimately leads away from, rather than towards, the divine. Media increasingly portrays faith as archaic, harmful, or irrelevant, leaving an empty throne at the heart of culture. Characters search for meaning in fleeting pleasures, self-discovery, or human connection, yet the deepest spiritual void remains unfilled. This profound, unsettling realization is that the dazzling culture presented by Hollywood is ultimately devoid of its most crucial element, God, and what that means for humanity's eternal destiny. But is this trajectory, this cultural shaping, merely the accidental outcome of creative freedom and evolving societal norms? Or are there deeper, more deliberate forces at play? Who truly pulls the strings in Hollywood's shadowy boardrooms, in exclusive parties, and behind closed-door writers' conferences? Beyond the influential producers, powerful studios, and financial interests, one must ask if there is a spiritual battle for the minds of those who shape our narratives. The Bible speaks of unseen forces, of a prince of the power of the air, influencing the course of this world. Is Hollywood's path merely human ambition, or is it guided by forces both human and spiritual, constructing a modern Tower of Babel designed to elevate man while subtly preparing the world for a deception even more profound? The book of Revelation paints a dramatic, chilling picture of Babylon the Great, a city, yet more profoundly, a global system of spiritual deception. It is described as a great prostitute, arrayed in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold and precious stones, holding a golden cup full of abominations. This entity, we are told, rules over the kings of the earth, intoxicating all nations with the wine of her spiritual harlotry. What few realize is that these ancient prophecies may be unfolding in plain sight, reflected in the dazzling, all-consuming influence of modern Hollywood. This industry, with its glittering wealth, unparalleled global reach, and undeniable sway over cultures and leaders, presents a profound question. Could Hollywood embody aspects of this prophetic system of spiritual deception? Hollywood's true power lies not in overt pronouncements against God, but in its masterful spiritual seduction. It subtly draws hearts away from divine truth by painting captivating pictures of ultimate happiness found in worldly pleasures, fame, illicit romance, boundless wealth, and self-gratification. Narratives consistently present these pursuits as the keys to fulfillment, often requiring characters, and by extension viewers, to compromise biblical principles. This is the insidious allure of the world that Scripture warns against, a constant whisper that a life lived apart from God, chasing fleeting desires, is somehow more authentic, more rewarding. It's a spiritual poison, carefully disguised as entertainment. At its core, Hollywood is a factory of illusions. Through stunning visual effects, meticulously crafted narratives, and idealized portrayals, it manufactures compelling, yet often untrue, realities. It creates a world where happiness is a product, freedom is license, and fulfillment is found in fleeting experiences or self-serving triumphs. These are the false lights and empty promises of an industry that, like the father of lies, promises freedom but delivers spiritual bondage. The captivating magic of filmmaking can lead unsuspecting viewers astray, convincing them that what is false is true and what is empty can fill the soul, ultimately leaving them disillusioned and spiritually unfulfilled. Revelation chapter 17 verse 4 describes Babylon holding a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. Hollywood, in its dazzling, irresistible packaging, offers a potent, intoxicating brew within just such a golden cup. It normalizes and often glorifies what the Bible explicitly calls sin: sexual immorality, excessive violence, unchecked greed, pride, and open rebellion against God's standards. These vices are frequently presented as sophisticated, glamorous, or even necessary for personal liberation. Consuming this intoxicating brew leads to spiritual drunkenness, dulling the conscience and blinding believers to biblical truth, making them spiritually numb to what God calls abominable. This is not merely entertainment, it is spiritual poison. The pervasive reach of Hollywood's influence subtly presses individuals towards conformity with its worldview, creating a mark of cultural compliance. It dictates what is fashionable, what is acceptable, what is considered progressive, and what is deemed outdated. This relentless pressure creates a spiritual current, an invisible force that encourages individuals to conform to its shifting moral landscape, rather than standing firm on biblical truth. Those who dare to resist this tide are often portrayed as narrow-minded, bigoted, or simply irrelevant. This is not a literal mark upon the hand or forehead, but a spiritual one, an internal alignment that hinders a believer's countercultural walk with God. The cumulative effect of Hollywood's influence is far more than mere cultural shaping. It is a spiritual battle for the minds and hearts of individuals. The Apostle Paul warns us to take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. Yet modern entertainment often actively works against this divine command, sowing seeds of doubt, confusion, and rebellion. What we allow into our minds through media shapes our beliefs, our values, and ultimately, our spiritual trajectory. This is a spiritual warfare, fought not with earthly weapons, but for the very fabric of our souls. We must be vigilant, for this battle is real, and the stakes are eternal. Hollywood's relentless push for global unity without God, its normalization of moral relativism, its celebration of self-worship, and its seduction into worldly pleasures all serve a profound prophetic purpose. It is preparing the world, culturally and spiritually, for the grand stage of end-time events. as the biblical narrative unfolds, a global system will rise in opposition to God. And Hollywood, with its unparalleled power to shape thought and desire, is undeniably playing a significant role in setting that stage, making what was once unthinkable now seem inevitable. We have journeyed through the glittering facades and shadowy depths of Hollywood, uncovering its origins, its relentless expansion, and its subtle yet profound spiritual drift. We have seen how a dream factory became a shaper of values, a purveyor of idols, and perhaps an echo of ancient Babylon itself. But now, the time for mere observation is over. The curtain has been pulled back, the hidden mechanisms revealed. No longer can we remain passive consumers, unaware of the spiritual currents that flow through every screen, every song, every story. The conflict for culture, for our minds, and for the hearts of our children is real. It is a spiritual battle, and ignorance is no longer an option. The time has come to awaken, to understand that, as it is written, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. We are called to be awake, vigilant, and armed with truth. But how do we navigate this complex terrain? The answer lies in the power of discernment. This is not merely critical thinking, but a spiritual gift, enabling believers to test every spirit, 1 John chapter 4, verse 1, and separate truth from deception. It is an active posture of mind and spirit, cultivated through prayer, diligent study of Scripture, and reliance on the Holy Spirit's guidance. Discernment allows us to see beyond the captivating visuals and persuasive narratives, to perceive the underlying worldview, the subtle messages, and the spiritual fruit. It is our internal compass, divinely calibrated, that guides us through the labyrinth of modern media, protecting us from the intoxicating brew of Babylon and equipping us to stand firm on the rock of truth. Yet discernment alone is not enough. We are commanded to guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Our hearts are the wellspring of life, the very core of our being, and what we allow into them, through our eyes and ears, shapes our character, our beliefs, and our destiny. Ungodly media, consumed without boundary or filter, can subtly poison that source, leading to spiritual decay, moral compromise, and a desensitization to sin. It is a personal responsibility to be intentional, to set boundaries, and to be selective about the entertainment we consume. To choose wholesome activities, to engage in uplifting content, and to protect the sacred space of our minds from the constant onslaught of worldly narratives. However, awakening to the spiritual battle does not mean retreating entirely from culture. While discernment and protection are vital, God calls us not to flee the world, but to be salt and light within it. Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. To withdraw completely is to surrender the very ground where influence is wielded. Instead, we are called to thoughtful engagement, to be present, and to strategically impact the cultural landscape for Christ. This means understanding the narratives, critically assessing them, and finding avenues to infuse them with truth and hope. It is a delicate balance requiring wisdom and courage, but it is the path of those who refuse to let the darkness prevail, choosing instead to shine His light in every sphere. This engagement takes many forms, but perhaps none is more powerful than building a counter-narrative. Hollywood has mastered the art of storytelling, but the ultimate story, the story of redemption, truth, and eternal hope, belongs to God. Believers are called to be creators, artists, and storytellers who infuse media with biblical wisdom, moral clarity, and the transformative power of the gospel. Whether through independent films, compelling digital content, inspiring music, or any artistic expression, we can offer alternatives that speak to the deepest longings of the human heart, pointing to the Creator rather than His creation. This is how we fight back, not with weapons of this world, but with stories of everlasting truth, transforming culture from within, one narrative at a time. Yet even as the shadows lengthen and the cultural currents grow stronger, the story does not end in despair. For what few realize is that no empire, no industry, no human endeavor exists outside the ultimate sovereignty of God. Just as Persia, a pagan nation, was chosen to fulfill divine prophecy and liberate God's people, so too can any realm of human creativity be touched by His redemptive power. God has always used unlikely instruments, turning even the darkest moments into opportunities for His glory to shine. Even if the entertainment industry, in its current trajectory, seems to echo the machine of Babylon, God's kingdom will ultimately prevail. His truth, like an unstoppable tide, will triumph over every deception, and His light will disperse every shadow, for nothing is beyond His reach. This profound truth offers a breathtaking vision: the redemption of the arts. Creativity, in its purest form, is a divine gift, a reflection of our Creator who imagined galaxies into being. It is a powerful conduit for truth and beauty, designed to inspire, uplift, and reveal the wonders of God. The call is for believers to reclaim this sacred ground, not to abandon it. Imagine a world where the brilliance of music, the depth of storytelling, the visual majesty of film, and the power of performance are infused with biblical truth, beauty, and excellence. When God's people engage with the arts not merely as consumers, but as creators filled with His Spirit, transforming culture from within, the entertainment industry can once again fulfill its original, divine purpose, to honor and proclaim the ultimate artist, the King of all creation. But in this pursuit of redemption, a crucial distinction must be made. Our worship and adoration belongs solely to the Creator, not to the creation, however magnificent. The fleeting glamour of Hollywood, the ephemeral fame, the intoxicating wealth, these are but echoes, pale reflections of a glory that belongs only to God. The world may elevate human achievement to godlike status, constructing empty stages for self-glorification, but true fulfillment, lasting joy, and eternal purpose are found only in bowing before the One who crafted the cosmos and breathed life into humanity. This is the ultimate challenge: to redirect our awe, our wonder, and our worship from the temporary and the manufactured to the infinite, unchanging majesty of the one true God, rejecting all forms of idolatry. Now, after everything you've heard, I ask you, do you believe Hollywood is fulfilling a prophetic role today? We are living in times when prophecies unfold quietly, and what once seemed ancient is now more alive than ever. So, where do you stand in this story? Do you see signs of these prophecies in today's headlines and streaming queues? Leave your thoughts in the comment box below. And if you'd like us to keep exploring how current events connect with biblical prophecy, give this video a thumbs up and share it. This lets us know we should continue uncovering more prophecies unfolding right before our eyes. And if you're ready to dive even deeper, click right now on the video you see on your screen. Understanding these times is more essential than ever. Blessings.